Good morning, everyone. My name is Alex Lackey, and I'm Director of Public and Government Affairs for AAA Northeast, and delighted to welcome you to the first in our Deconstructing the Infrastructure Bill series. Hope you like the little pun there. Obviously, we're going to be doing a lot of constructing over the next few years, and we're delighted to have here folks from the Northeast Corridor Commission to talk about Amtrak and rail in the Northeast and their plan. For 2035, a nice 15-year plan to really improve our rail system. So here we have Mitch Warren, who's the executive director. He has been with the commission for, I think, about a little over a decade. And before that, he's worked in various Senate committees and got his start actually I was looking at your LinkedIn page for the late Senator Lautenberg in New Jersey.
Right.
So you're definitely well familiar with the region. I'd also like to welcome Nicole Busich, who has been with the commission for a few years. Before that, she was with WSP, and she also is a professor at NYU Wagner School of Public Service in the urban planning section. And she happens to be my professor because I'm going to school there at night. So I hope I do well on this webinar. But I'm delighted to have you both here, and I'll just let you take it away. And we have a little presentation to tell us what the commission has been up to. And then for any folks in the audience, we'd love to have you type in any questions in the chat. Feel free to ask anything, and I will try to get to as many questions as I can.
All right. Yeah, thanks a lot, Alec, and appreciate you having us to talk about our new plans for the corridor. Obviously, everything's very exciting with the new infrastructure bill. After working on these issues for a few decades myself, and after many, many decades of underinvestment in the corridor, this really is a new era. And you introduced Nicole, she's the one who headed up this whole effort to develop this Connect NEC plan. So she will certainly be jumping in later to answer questions and add to what I'm saying. And Beth Bullard from our office, who heads up our external affairs, is also on the call and may jump in later as well. But I figured I'd start just with a quick background on the corridor and the commission. I'm sure that most folks in this call are very familiar with the Northeast Corridor, but I always find it helpful just to begin to emphasize the importance of the corridor to the region, to the transportation network, and to the economy of the region. We have pre-pandemic, obviously things are a bit lower now, but pre-pandemic, we had over 2,000 trains a day on the corridor carrying over 800,000 daily passengers, commuter passengers, Amtrak passengers. And the trains are a mix of, we have 8 different commuter railroads operating on the corridor. We have Amtrak trains, everything from their Acela trains to their long distance trains. And we have a number of freight railroads who operate on different pieces of the corridor too, with much slower freight trains. So it's an extremely complex endeavor. It's further complicated by the fact that the right-of-way is owned by 4 different entities. Amtrak owns the bulk of it, but up in Massachusetts, the MBTA owns it. From New Haven to the New York state line, Connecticut owns it. New York MTA owns about 10 miles from the state line to New Rochelle. So it's a very complicated endeavor, partly because of the complicated operations and ownership of the corridor, and the fact that the infrastructure is aging. We have all these trains and passengers operating on infrastructure that was mostly built between the Civil War and the New Deal. So we have many critical bridges and tunnels that are over 100 years old. Aging, decaying infrastructure has impacts on reliability. There's not enough capacity. So in light of all that, Congress created the Northeast Corridor Commission to bring some of the key players together to try and figure out how to pay for the corridor, how to plan for the future of the corridor. And so we have 18 voting commission members. This slide shows our state members appointed by the governor of each of the states and the District of Columbia. You can see Greg Slater from Maryland just left DOT, so we're waiting for the governor to nominate a replacement for him. But you can see it's generally the head of the transportation agency. or the major transit agency on the corridor. And we have representing DC, the secretary appoints 5 members. You can see the deputy secretary, the head of the FRA, head of the FTA, Diana Lopez, who's with the FRA, Christopher Coase is in the secretary's office, and then 4 members are appointed by the CEO of Amtrak. And in fact, Stephen Gardner, who's just become the CEO of Amtrak, is the only remaining original commission member from when the commission was first stood up back in, it's been over 10 years now. So all of these members have come together over the years. The first statutory requirement that we had was to develop a cost allocation formula for allocating all the shared costs on the corridor. And I'm mostly going to skip over this slide because I could easily spend an hour on this slide if I got into the details. But just to summarize, we spent about 4 years negotiating how to share costs on the corridor. We ended up with a cost allocation policy. It's available on our website, northeastcorridorcommission.com. And the document shows, it really has 3 pillars. It's the formula that allocates the costs, and that we allocate about $1.3 billion a year in shared operating and normalized replacement capital costs. And then for larger capital projects, we don't have a formula. We have something called project-based cost allocation, which has guidelines for how to allocate the costs of major bridge, tunnel, station, and other improvement and capacity projects that are beyond capital renewal. The second pillar of it is increasing, because the states were going to be paying more money for the corridor. They wanted more collaboration with Amtrak on planning, and they wanted more transparency and accountability. So we develop every year a 5-year plan. We develop an annual report. We're working right now on our FY21 annual report that'll come out by the end of March. And those look at the train operations. They look at how everybody's doing on delivering the projects. And then the third pillar is the federal partnership. It was important for our members who are going to be investing more in the corridor to also have a federal partner that was investing more. Thanks to the infrastructure bill, we have that. One of the most important planning endeavors that we've been working on, and which Nicole has been leading up, is Connect NEC 2035. And that is based on, some of you may be familiar with NEC Future, which was a planning effort that was run by the Federal Railroad Administration. That was really a very high-level visionary planning effort looking at, over the long term, where does the Northeast Corridor need to go? And what we've done with Connect NEC 2035 is develop a detailed roadmap for the first phase of NEC Future. We focused on 15 years through 2035, and it was a bottom-up approach where all of our members got together in a very collaborative way. It was unprecedented in the way that we have, for the first time, a corridor-wide plan that all of the agencies have been involved in developing, and it's a detailed plan. It's not a long-term vision, although obviously 15 years isn't exactly short-term either. But we lay out what needs to be done to bring the corridor to a state of good repair. We really focused on track outages. One of the biggest impediments to investing in the corridor, besides not having enough money, is the fact that getting track time is really hard. When you take a track out of service, it has a real negative impact on the performance of the trains. You often have to change schedules or cancel trains. If anything goes wrong, you have big reliability issues and big delays. So nobody likes to take tracks out of service, and it limits what you can do on the corridor. So we're trying to figure out how to sequence the project so that we can maximize the benefit of every track outage. And that's something that was unique to C35, and it's something that we're continuing to build on and improve upon. But getting maximum efficiency and productivity out of every track outage is critical to making this work. So we announced the C35 plan at Moynihan Train Hall in July. We had members representing US DOT, Amtrak, and many of the states joining us for this announcement. It was a big deal, and the fact that it was timed almost perfectly with the infrastructure bill was, just a very fortunate coincidence, really. I mean, we did this hoping something like that might happen, and are thrilled that we were able to do it. And like I said, the plan is focused on bringing the Northeast Corridor to a state of good repair, which will have significant impacts on on-time performance and train reliability. But we also have a number of capacity improvements that are going to allow more frequent train service. And when you add all this up, we also get better trip times, and I'll come to that in a second. But this next slide focuses on the infrastructure improvements. We do, in our annual report each year, we look at the causes of delay. And you can see that every year we've been tracking this. The number one cause of delay on the corridor has been infrastructure issues. And that is everything from infrastructure failures to delays that result from infrastructure outages that are needed in order to replace or repair aging infrastructure. So the work we're going to do as a result of Connect NEC is going to have significant impacts, we expect, on improving the reliability of the train service. And this next slide shows when you put all of the different projects that are part of the plan together, you actually do end up with significant trip time improvements. While NEC Future includes new right-of-way and 200-mile-an-hour service in places, for this first phase of that, we're not assuming any new right-of-way. So what we did was counted up all of the small trip time savings that you get when you replace a 100-year-old bridge or tunnel with something that's modern. When you replace the aging electric catenary system in some places with a modern catenary system that uses constant tension wires, you can move faster. There are places where you can improve upon the curvature without having to purchase new right-of-way. And so we took all of that together, and you can see that you get almost an hour between DC and Boston in trip time improvements, so just under half an hour on both the north end and the south end. So, even without brand new right-of-way, we do get some pretty good trip time improvements out of this. And you can see here, this shows we're able to go from 32 route miles a day of track where you can go. Right now it's 150 miles an hour. With the new Acela train sets, we expect that'll go to 160 miles an hour. So we're going from 32 route miles where you can do that to 132 by 2035, which certainly represents a good portion of that trip time savings. And just a few highlights in the northern part of the corridor in New England. Some of the biggest benefits are going to come from electrified commuter service, which will allow trip time improvements. They can hit better speeds, have faster acceleration. So we will see some notable commuter benefits in the north end. The infrastructure between New Haven and Boston is some of the newest on the corridor because it was replaced in the late 90s as part of the Acela program, where the track from New Haven to Boston was rebuilt and electrified. That was a major, in fact, Alec mentioned my old boss, Senator Frank Lautenberg, was a major champion of that effort from his role on the Appropriations Committee. In the Connecticut Westchester area, you can see that we're replacing all of the old bridges that need replacement, that are beyond their useful life. So we replace those. A lot of other improvements to the corridor. Connecticut has its Time for Connecticut plan, which is coordinated with what we're doing. So there's going to be some new express services as well. So you'll get a lot of trip time improvements in Connecticut. And then, of course, in New York, New Jersey area, we have the Gateway program is really the highlight there. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Hudson River tunnels. that need to move forward. The Portal North Bridge, which is moving forward. The Portal South Bridge needs to be done after that to add that capacity. The Sawtooth Bridge, Penn Station, there's Penn Station Access Program that New York's doing, Penn Station Reconstruction, Penn Station Expansion to allow us to take advantage of these new bridges and tunnels and move more trains and more people in and out of Penn Station. So a lot of exciting things going on in the New York, New Jersey area. Finally, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law is a huge part of this. And you can see the funding that we're going to see is critical to making this happen. The bill has $30 million directly for the corridor from the Fed State Partnership Program and Amtrak's Northeast Corridor account. It also has other money available through the CRISI program, through capital investment grants, which is funding the Hudson River tunnels, this new National Infrastructure Project Assistance Program for large multimodal projects, and the RAISE program. So there's a lot of opportunities within the infrastructure bill to fund many of these projects that we need to move forward. So with that in mind, we're moving from planning to determine a funding need, which was C35, and now we're doing a C35 update, which is how we're going to plan to invest in this funding. So we're really focused on implementation. And one of the biggest issues that we're working on is workforce. That's, along with track outages, one of the major challenges in investing this new money is that Amtrak and most all the agencies on the corridor are going to need to hire new workers to fund all of these new projects. And so that's going to be a challenge. It's a tough labor market, but it's critical for Amtrak and some of the other agencies to expand the size of their workforce so that we can get these projects done. It's going to take time to do that. So we're looking at what the ramp up is and how long that's going to take and how that might impact the timing of some of these projects. So in this last slide, just highlights the next steps, the implementation challenges that we're facing. I mentioned a few of them. The workforce challenges certainly are a core challenge. There's agreements that need to be negotiated to get you to construction. We have to negotiate the state and local share and how people are going to pay that and split that with Amtrak and between themselves. And then we need to coordinate between all of our members. It's the Northeast Corridor is a network. So what happens in one state or with one commuter agency has impacts up and down the corridor. That's where the commission comes in to make sure, working with Amtrak and all the members, that all of this is tied together. With our focus on track outages, it's more important than ever that members stick to their travel schedules and are able to move these projects as planned so we can maximize the productivity of each of these track outages. And then when it's all done, we're going to go to C37. And every 2 years or so, we're going to be updating the C35 plan because, this is a very dynamic process. Projects are always changing and moving, and we're going to continue to keep this plan up to date to inform the work that US DOT is doing to develop all of these grant programs. They're developing a project inventory, which is based on going to be based on the C35 update. That's going to guide the selection of projects for funding. So it's an exciting time for the corridor. For the first time, we have a comprehensive plan to guide us, and for the first time, we have infrastructure funds available from the federal government in a significant way to help us move these projects forward. So it's an exciting time. It's going to be a challenging time because we've gone from many years of underfunding to suddenly real serious funding, and everybody's got to make that adjustment. It's going to be challenging. So with that, Alec, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Really informative, great presentation, and it really seems like every agency is committed to working and partnering on this. One kind of initial question that I have, I know you mentioned kind of the 24 billion from the infrastructure bill that is kind of that's the maximum that we can get here for that sort of grant in the Northeast corridor. You say you expect to get that full 24 billion. I mean, I'm biased. I'd like to, I think we've got a lot of ridership up here. I think I'd like to get it all.
Well, yeah, that's going to be up to DOT, right? They're the ones who are going to give out the grants. Certainly we're hoping to get the max there, but that's going to be seen as DOT implements this over the next few years. But certainly there's a lot of need, and we'll be pushing forward on it. And they're good partners, and they're obviously looking at the whole country and have to make those decisions. So in the end, it's going to be up to them. But would like to bring as much as we can to the corridor.
I'm curious how the plan, if implemented fully, would impact ridership. Obviously, we want people traveling these corridors to take the train rather than the car or fly. So I'm curious what the projections show for ridership.
I don't know. Nicole texted me she was having some issues and was booted off. There she's back. You made it back.
Yeah.
I'll let her answer this because it's
yeah, we certainly did look at what the future ridership could be. At the end of the day, we knew that the original analysis, which was sort of the planning exercise to identify the need, in the update work that we're doing now, the amount of work we're going to get done over the 15-year period is going to have to be reduced based on the workforce constraint, based on the fact that the funding, albeit levels that we have never seen, it's not the $100 billion that we identified as the funding gap, right? So something has to give in this new update planning exercise. So anytime you have improved travel time, anytime you have more service, and we were looking at potentially doubling New Jersey transit service into New York, significant travel time savings for Amtrak, Acela passengers, and regional trains. So we don't have exact estimates at this point, but certainly for C37, when we have, which will issue a year from this summer, we will have more concise numbers that we can stand by that would be based on this updated analysis.
Makes sense. And one question that we've gotten from a couple people is about climate and resilience. How does the plan account for or guard against the potential for rising sea levels and storm surges, particularly along the coast, which is where we are for a lot of these projects?
Right. Do you want me to take it? Sure. So in terms of climate and resilience, all of our stakeholders, all of the commission member agencies who are leading this project inherently are incorporating resilience measures to harden their infrastructure. As you well know, if you've traveled the Northeast corridor, on many parts of the journey, you see water, right? Especially, pretty much the whole corridor, but there's certainly areas where it's more dominant, the shoreline, Connecticut shoreline, for example. So so in terms of any new infrastructure, certainly would be designed to the new standards. In the area that I just mentioned, the shoreline east, there C35 included a study that will advance to look at options for new alignments between New Haven and Providence. So you can stay tuned on that. And then just in terms of climate change and carbon emissions reduction, back to the ridership question, is these improvements in travel time, additional frequency is going to pull people out of cars. It's going to pull people out of air travel. The Northeast corridor pre-pandemic was at least had the lion's share of the market between New York and Washington, D.C., not so much on the northern end. So there would be some shifts, and that inherently would result in lower CO2 emissions. So I think the collective of that in terms of the infrastructure resiliency piece, and as well as the sort of the general impact of an already carbon friendly mode, right? So we're starting from a good place. One other thing I'll mention I forgot is that in several cases we are shifting to all electric service where there previously was diesel service. So that's another big shift and impact on the environment.
Great, thanks. And I know another question that we've gotten is about some of the new stations that are proposed, the 4 in the East Bronx, 1 in North Brunswick, the Amtrak at Green Airport in Rhode Island, and then an MBTA station at Pawtucket. Are those all, I think those are all kind of local priorities as well. How important are those to you for the general Amtrak service, as well as the the overall plan as a whole for getting those gains?
Well, those Amtrak may stop at some of those, probably won't stop at many of those, but we try to take into account while doing this. And the corridor it's an important intercity corridor and it's an important commuter corridor. So we tried to account for the priorities of both the Amtrak intercity trains and the different commuter railroads to make sure that we can try and include both of their priorities as much as possible. And where there are differences of opinion, we try and work it out between Amtrak and the commuter railroads to keep everybody on the same page. But to the maximum extent possible, we're trying to address those priorities because we want as many people as possible taking the train between cities on Amtrak, and we want as many people as possible taking the commuter trains, in order to get to work, keeping them out of their cars, hopefully lowering carbon emissions, reducing some of the congestion on the roads.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you add a station, a new station will be fully ADA accessible. In many cases, like the 4 stations in the East Bronx, you're providing an opportunity that is not there now, and will have impact on future development and travel patterns. So it's good for the community, good for the rail service.
Great. And another question that we've received is looking at which projects are more near term versus mid or long term. And I know this is going to be updated for the C37 plan. So I don't want to necessarily put you on the spot here, but are there any, if you had to look at the 5 states that we cover, at least New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, is there like one project from each state that stands out to you as being like, this is a critical thing that we've got to make sure we include in the next plan?
Well, certainly. I'll start, and then I'll gonna hand it over to you, Nicole, when I when I run out of room. But in New Jersey, certainly, I mean, we're already soon going to begin construction on the Portal North Bridge. The Hudson River tunnels they're delayed a few years, as everyone knows, but they're back on track, and that's going to be ready to move soon. There's a number of other projects that New York, New Jersey, Amtrak, Penn Station Access is going to be moving soon. And they're talking about what other projects can move soon, but I think a lot of those will be moving forward in the next 5 years. In Connecticut, they have the Walk Bridge, the Connecticut River Bridge are going to be moving forward soon. I don't know if you want to jump in, Nicole. I'm trying to think. Rhode Island, Massachusetts, any other Connecticut?
Well, Rhode Island, I think the highlight is the TF Green Airport project, and just generally the visioning work that is ongoing in the Providence to Boston territory, looking at the electrification of that. Full electrification is going to be a huge impact on travel time and performance, and so those are and Mitch, you covered everything else. And the one missing that's not in your territory but is worth mentioning is the B&P tunnel in Maryland, which is also sort of in that category of major state of good repair backlog projects that need to start moving.
Great, thank you. And I think we are just about out of time. So really appreciate you both coming on this morning. I thought it was a really informative presentation. I hope all the audience members did. and we will share the recording as well. So if anyone has any colleagues that weren't able to join, feel free to pass this along to them. We hope to see you next week for our chat with the Electrification Coalition, talking about everything in the infrastructure bill related to electric vehicles. But thank you, Mitch, thank you, Nicole, thank you, Beth, as well, for helping set this all up, and looking forward to seeing what happens over the next 15 years.
All right. Thanks a lot, Alex. Thanks for having us.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.